This story happened in 2003. It was a beautiful August day. Summer was coming to an end. However, I was very excited to start my last year of elementary school. It was a normal day, nothing out of the ordinary. My mother and I had just left McDonald's. She had some errands to run, and the last stop was to the Chase Bank. Pulling up to the drive-thru ATM machine, my mom pulls out her debit card and slides it into the machine. While following the steps it takes in order to get the cash out, suddenly the ATM machine shuts off. "Shit!" my mom yelled, hitting at the ATM machine, trying to get it to spit her card back out. Nothing. The ATM machine must have lost power? She looked at me and said. Her tone sounded just as confused as the look on my face. Once she quickly realized she couldn't go into the bank for a new card, she became very annoyed. Now she had no cash and no debit card, thinking she'll just go to the bank in the morning once the bank solves their power crisis. Pulling out of the bank onto the street, you make a right turn onto a one-way, where, about 20 feet up, is a traffic light. We both look up out of habit and notice that the traffic light has no light at all. My mom stops at the light and now treats it like a four-way stop. While waiting for her turn, she mumbles to herself, "A main circuit must have blown nearby." Now wondering if the lights would be on at our house, she quickly rushed home. We only lived about 5 minutes from the bank. When we got home, the first thing she did was switch a light on. Again, nothing. For some reason, this made me really excited. I was only 10 at the time, so I was treating the situation like a campout or something. I could tell, however, my mom was not thrilled. Being I was an only child, I was going to go outside and play. It was just me and my mom, and that was how I liked it. I was used to it. We lived in a really small town north of Detroit. We stayed in a safe neighborhood where all sorts of kids were always outside playing, and not to mention my elementary school was just a couple blocks up the street. The neighborhood was mainly older people and young parents with kids my age. 2 houses down, however, from mine, was a middle-aged man. He had no wife and no kids. Steve was his name. He was weird, and my mom told me to stay away from him and his house. About 8 p.m. I came back home. The sun was just starting to set. I took a bath and got my pajamas on. Again, out of habit, I sat down and turned on the TV. Then I remembered the power was out. I forgot because I was playing outside and it was still light out. Once I remembered that the power was out, I actually realized how quiet everything was around me. It sort of freaked me out. As dusk approached, my mom gathered as many candles as she could find throughout the house and started lighting them. Thank God she loved candles. She had a lot. Now with the house lit up a little, we could at least see where we were walking. But something about the candles and having no power made it even more creepy. It was something about silence and darkness that was very terrifying. It was now about 9:30 p.m. and we were about to go to bed. I was sleeping in my mom's room that night. She blew out the candles because she didn't want to risk a fire. Pitch black, everything. This was before the time it was common for people to have in-home generators, so the whole block was just dark. This was also the time before iPads and YouTube, so we had nothing to watch or listen to. By now, I was terrified. I just kept picturing the attic door busting open and Michael Myers would appear in the doorway with a butcher knife. I watched a lot of scary movies as a kid, so my mind always wandered. Eventually, I dozed off. It was now 12 p.m. I only knew because my mom had a digital watch. That's how we were able to tell time. I had woken up because I had smelled something. Smoke. Mom, wake up. Huh? She woke up startled. What's that smell? I asked her. She paused and sniffed the air. Somebody is smoking a cigarette. It was scary because she sounded so shocked. She got on her knees, crawled up to the window, right above the bed, and peeked out. The window was open to let a breeze in. I didn't think anything of it because I was young and didn't realize what was going on. Stay here, she told me. I was terrified at the fact of staying in that dark room alone, so I jumped up and followed behind my mom. Nothing but darkness. Now the smell of smoke was getting stronger as we walked into the living room. Our house was small due to the fact it was just her and I. Walking up to the front door, she placed her hands on the glass so she could see outside. "It's so dark," she said to herself. She didn't back away though. She just kept staring outside. "You see anything?" I whispered. She didn't respond. "Mom! Is that somebody on the porch?" she said to herself. There were no porch lights, no street lights, just darkness. Lunging towards me, now lifting my small body, my mom carried me to her room and put me in her closet and told me to sit there and don't make any noise, and most importantly, do not come out. "I'll be back in a minute, baby," she told me. By now I was crying, thinking my mom was going to die. I had no idea what was going on. About 5 minutes later, she did, however, come back. She told me to get out of the closet and that everything was fine. We both got back in the bed and tried to go to sleep. Tossing and turning, we were not able to go back to sleep. Looking at the digital watch, it was now 1:30 a.m. I was hungry and just wanted time to speed up so it would be daylight. While lying there, I was thinking about what fast food place I wanted my mom to take me to in the morning. I heard a squeaking of a door. It was very faint, but I could hear it. I just laid there. My eyes began to tear up again. After the first squeak, I didn't hear anything. It was silent. I was finally able to go back to sleep. Awakened again, however, by this time, not by the smoke smell. I could hear talking. Someone was saying something, but I couldn't make out where it was coming from or what was being said. I laid there in silence and tried my best to understand what was being said. I assumed the talking was coming from outside, but then I forgot. When my mom and I had laid down that second time, she had closed the window. My stomach had sank and I had felt sick. Now I was thinking the talking was coming from in the house. It sounded like a song or someone was humming. In my head, I followed along with the humming. "Hush, little baby, don't you cry." That was the tune, but that's all that was being said. "Hush, little baby, don't you cry," over and over again. Not wanting to yell for my mom to wake up, I was hitting her legs with mine under the covers. "What the hell are you kicking me for?" she said in an irritated voice. I was afraid of making any noise, so I whispered in her ear, "Someone is in the house. I hear them singing." My mom popped up in fear. She could hear the singing too. "We need to get out of here," she said again to herself. On the desk where she kept the digital watch, she also had put a single candle and a lighter there. She lights the candle and carries it around the room to see. She puts a hoodie on and some pants and wraps me in a blanket and tells me to wait here on the bed for her. The singing had stopped, back to dead silence, and now I could just hear my mom's heavy breathing. She left the room again, and then I seen a small glow pop up in the living room. Then that singing started again. It was louder this time. I instantly started crying. All of a sudden, I hear someone running towards the bedroom. In the blink of an eye, my mom appeared in the doorway with a knife in one hand and the candle lit in the other hand. "Come on, Adrian," she whispered to me, grabbing me by the hand. I blew out my candle and put it on the desk. "What's wrong?" I asked my mom. She was practically dragging me behind her. When we got to the back door, I noticed it was already open. A little confused, but I didn't ask. We get to the back door and she picks me up and we run away from the house. Again, crying, begging her to tell me what happened. We run to the neighbor's house across the street and my mom starts pounding on the door. "Mike! Mike!" she was yelling as she knocked. Seconds later, someone appeared in the doorway with a flashlight. "It's Andrea!" she yelled. "I need your help, Mike." The door swung open. "Andrea? Are you okay? What's going on?" "Mike, someone is in my house." Mike gave my mom a confused look and then ordered us to come in the house. "Where's that cell phone you were showing me last week? I need to call the police." He could tell my mom and I were very frightened, so he did not hesitate. About 15 seconds later, Mike came back with a tiny Nokia cell phone. My mom dialed 911 and looked at Mike and asked him if he thought the police station was open and if they had a generator. Right as he replied yes, she heard someone on the line say, "Hello, 911, what's your emergency?" My mom quickly explained to the operator what had happened. She hung up and said 5 to 7 minutes. Just out of curiosity, I walked over to Mike's curtains. We were sitting on his couch in his dark living room. He had a flashlight upwards so we could see just a little bit. When I looked across the street to see my house, I noticed a small glow coming from inside. "Mom, come look at this," I called to her. She hustles over to me and looks out the window too. "It's a small light coming from our house," I told her. "Mom, I blew out that candle before we went outside." Her reply gave me chills. "I know you did, baby. I know." Looking out the window, we eventually seen the headlights of the blinking and red-blue police car. My mom told me to stay here with Mr. Mike, and she ran outside waving her arms up and down to make sure the cops seen her. There were about 3 cars that pulled up. 2 cops went into the house drawing their guns out. Mike and I were watching from the window this whole time. "I want to go with my mom," I demanded. I wanted to go outside with her. I didn't want to leave her out there. He took my hand and we went outside. She was standing next to a police officer. He pulled out a notepad and asked my mom exactly what had happened. My daughter and I went to bed around 9 o'clock last night. She woke me up because she smelled smoke. I smelled it too. Then when I got up to see where it was coming from, I went to look out my front door and noticed some movement on the porch. It was very dark, but with the moonlight, I could see the figure of a person sitting on my porch. I grabbed my daughter and took her into my bedroom to hide her. Then, when I got back to the living room, I opened the door to confront the person sitting on the porch, but they were gone. There was nothing but half a cigarette sitting on the porch. It was still lit. I stepped on it and went back in the house. My daughter and I went back to bed, and then she woke me up again, telling me she was hearing sounds from in the house and that she believed someone was actually in the house. I heard it too, so I got up again and I went to the kitchen to get a knife. While I was in the kitchen, I noticed the back door was wide open. I ran back to the room to get my daughter. By this time, the singing or whatever it was getting louder. I did not want to follow the noise. I just wanted to get my little girl out of the house. We ran out as fast as we could and came over to Mike's, and I called you guys. The policeman closes his notepad and thanked my mom for her statement. Soon after, we heard one of the policemen scream, "Put your hands up!" We could see the flashlights now coming back towards the living room. I felt like I was gonna throw up. I screamed, "Mom, who is that?" She jogged over to the police officers and watched as they carried a man to the back of the police car. That man was Steve, the creepy neighbor. Another cop who was also in the house came up to my mom and told her that they found Steve in our house and that he was sitting in my bedroom on the bed. The cop also told my mom that he was glad she did not go into the room to check where the sound was coming from because he had a knife, and the knife had been taped at the handle to make the grip better, and it was sitting right next to him. He started telling her about the different options she had when it came to pressing charges and things like that. The last thing he said to my mom still haunts me to this day. He said when they first walked into my bedroom, Steve was sitting on the bed, holding one of my baby dolls, rocking it back and forth, singing a lullaby. Also turns out he was a registered sex offender. Steve went to jail. When daylight came that next day, the power was still out. This time, we packed up our things and my mom and I went to my grandparents' house. We had no problems for the next week. Yes, I say week because that's how long the power was out in the whole city, the whole state, and the whole side of the East Coast. This was known as the 2003 Blackout. 55 million people were without power that whole week. When the power finally came back on, my mom went and purchased a handgun. That night, she learned that she was a target for men like Steve, a young, single mother with a young daughter. We lived in that house for the next 4 years, never had another problem. We never seen Steve again either. Who knows what happened to him? Was he still in jail? Did he move? I thought about Steve a lot, and I always thought about that night. Darkness can sometimes play tricks on your mind, and other times people take advantage of darkness and prey on the weak.